So, biopharma breakthroughs, huh? There's just so much out there right now.
That's incredible, really.
It is. It really is. But we're going to make sense of it today, right?
Absolutely. That's the plan. We unleashed a bunch of AI agents to really dig into the data, and the results are pretty fascinating.
I mean, publicly traded U.S. biopharma companies, that's a lot of ground to cover.
It really is. But the AI looked at everything from company websites to SEC filings.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. Scientific databases, news aggregators, things we'd never get through on our own.
Exactly. And that's the beauty of this whole thing, right? They can sift through all that information, and we get to see what's really important, the truly groundbreaking stuff.
Exactly.
Okay, so let's dive in. I know you're itching to talk about some of the actual products. What are some of the innovations that really blew you away?
Oh, there's so many. One that just jumps out is this gene therapy for Jan. You know, that rare genetic disorder. It causes a ton of neurological problems.
Right.
And until now, treatments have been, well, pretty limited.
Yeah. I was reading about that. So what makes this new therapy so different?
Well, get this. It uses this modified virus, an AAV, as a vector to deliver a healthy copy of the gene straight into the patient's cells.
Wow. Directly into the cells.
It's designed as a single-dose treatment, like one and done, potentially a lifelong cure.
A single dose. That's incredible. Shows you how far we've come. And speaking of amazing advancements, what about that mRNA vaccine for the Marburg virus? I bet most people have never even heard of Marburg.
Yeah, it's a pretty nasty hemorrhagic fever, super contagious, and up until now, there's just been no good way to prevent it.
Right. I remember reading that developing a vaccine has been a huge challenge. So what makes this mRNA vaccine so special?
Well, it uses the same technology that we used to develop the COVID-19 vaccines.
Oh, right. I'd forgotten about that.
But it's been specifically tailored for the Marburg virus. It's showing us just how versatile mRNA technology really is. Like, we can adapt it to all kinds of emerging threats.
It's pretty amazing. But that's just two examples, right? I mean, we're just scratching the surface here. There's so much happening in immunotherapy, personalized medicine. You mentioned CAR T-cell therapy earlier. Can you break that down for us? Like, how does it actually work?
Well, so basically it's immunotherapy, right? And what they do is they extract T cells from the patient's blood. T cells are a type of white blood cell.
Okay.
And then they modify those T cells in the lab. They give them these special receptors called CARs. They stand for chimeric antigen receptors, but everyone just says CARs.
Gotcha.
CARs. And these CARs are designed to target proteins found on the surface of cancer cells.
Oh. So it's like they give the immune system a way to zero in on those cancer cells, right? Like a guided missile.
Exactly. It's super precise. And then once these modified T cells are put back into the patient, they can recognize and attack the cancer cells. And we're seeing some really exciting results, especially for certain blood cancers.
Amazing. But I'm sure these therapies aren't without their challenges, right?
Yeah.
I mean, where do things stand with clinical trials?
Well, most of these cutting-edge products are still in the early stages of development. They've shown a lot of promise in those early trials, but they still have to go through the whole rigorous process of larger trials and then get regulatory approval.
Makes sense. So still a lot of hurdles, but the potential is definitely there.
Yeah.
But it's not just about these individual products, right? I mean, they're driving larger trends across the whole biopharma industry. What are some of the big picture changes that you're seeing?
I'd say one major trend is this move toward personalized therapies. You know, we're getting away from that one-size-fits-all approach and focusing more on tailoring treatments to a person's unique genetic makeup.
So it's a whole new way of thinking about medicine.
And it's being driven by all these advancements in things like genomics and bioinformatics.
It's incredible. It really is. And of course, it's not just about the science. The business side of biopharma is changing like crazy too. I'm dying to hear more about those company rankings the AI came up with. It's not just about how many new therapies a company's working on, right?
Oh, no, not at all. The AI looked at so many different factors to come up with those rankings, like the stage of clinical trials, partnerships, how the market's moving, overall investment in all these breakthrough initiatives.
So it's about who's really committed to pushing the boundaries.
Exactly. It's not just about who's making the most noise, it's about who's walking the walk. And what's really interesting is that the AI found some pretty surprising players in the biopharma landscape, companies you wouldn't necessarily think of as being on the cutting edge.
Ooh, that's what I want to hear about. It's not just the big pharma giants dominating the field anymore.
Nope, not necessarily. There are some smaller companies, some real movers and shakers that are really making waves, especially in niche areas like gene editing and personalized medicine. They're taking risks. pushing the envelope and forming these really smart partnerships.
That's so
It
cool.
allows them to compete with the big guys.
It's such an exciting time to be watching the biopharma space. It feels like things are really changing.
Oh, absolutely. The landscape is dynamic. The pace of innovation is through the roof. It's amazing to see these breakthroughs reshape the industry and ultimately how they're going to change healthcare for all of us.
Well, I can't wait to hear more. Let's get into those company rankings and see who the AI has crowned as the true biopharma innovators.
All right, ready to see who made the cut.
Hit me with it. I'm so curious.
Okay, so one company that really jumped out at me was GeneWeave Therapeutics. They're doing some pretty amazing things with CRISPR.
GeneWeave Therapeutics. Okay, I've heard of CRISPR, but remind me, what is that again?
CRISPR, it's a gene editing technology. It's like super precise. It lets scientists go in and actually modify DNA sequences.
Like the ultimate biological toolkit.
Exactly. And GeneWeave is using it to develop therapies for a bunch of different genetic diseases. Cystic fibrosis, sickle cell anemia, things like that.
Wow. And they're ranked high on the list.
They are. They're not just developing one-off treatments. They're building a whole platform. It could potentially lead to cures for so many diseases.
That is incredible. It really shows you what these smaller companies can do. They can move fast and really focus on those niche areas.
Absolutely. Another company that I found really interesting was Immunosculpt. They're kind of a mid-sized firm. They're all about personalized cancer vaccine.
Personalized cancer vaccines.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm intrigued.
Yeah, so basically, they tailor the vaccine to a person's specific tumor.
Hold on. So you're telling me they can train your immune system to attack your cancer?
Pretty much. So they take a biopsy of the tumor,
Okay.
and then they sequence the DNA of those tumor cells. It lets them identify those unique mutations that make the cancer cells different from healthy cells.
So it's like a fingerprint of the tumor, right?
Exactly. And then, based on that fingerprint, they can create a vaccine that teaches the patient's immune system to recognize and destroy those specific cells.
Wow. Personalized medicine is changing everything, isn't it? It's incredible.
It really is. And Immunosculpt is a great example of how collaboration can really drive innovation. They've teamed up with some major pharmaceutical companies
Oh, that makes sense. To help with what?
to speed things up with research, development, manufacturing.
Smart. So it's not just about the science, it's about strategy too. These smaller companies are finding ways to play with the big guys.
Exactly. And that brings up an interesting point. While these smaller companies are surging ahead, some of the big pharma companies are actually struggling a bit.
Really? That's surprising. I would have thought they'd be leading the charge with all their resources.
You'd think so, right? But a lot of them are still really stuck in those traditional drug development models.
I guess those models can be pretty slow and expensive.
Yeah, and they're having a hard time pivoting to these newer, faster approaches that are really driving innovation.
So size isn't everything. You need to be able to adapt. Embrace those new technologies and ways of doing things.
Exactly. And I think we're seeing this shift in power within the industry. The companies that are holding on to the old ways are falling behind.
This sounds like a changing of the guard.
It is. And the implications are huge. I mean, we're on the verge of a healthcare revolution. But with these advancements, we have to think about the challenges, right?
Absolutely. Like what?
Well, one big one is accessibility. We need to make sure these innovations are affordable and available to everyone.
Right, not just a select few. And what about the ethics of all this? It seems like every time we make a breakthrough, it comes with a whole new set of ethical questions.
You're right. Like with gene editing, CRISPR has incredible potential, but there are concerns about unintended consequences.
Yeah, I mean, we're talking about modifying genes.
It's powerful stuff. We need to have some serious conversations about how to use these technologies responsibly.
It's not just about the science, it's about the impact on society.
Exactly. And that's something we all need to be a part of. Scientists, policymakers, healthcare providers,
Right.
everyone.
So much to think about. Okay, let's step back for a second and give our listeners a little recap. What are the big takeaways from our deep dive into biopharma?
I think the biggest thing to remember is that this industry is bursting with innovation. We're seeing breakthroughs in gene therapy, mRNA technology, immunotherapy, and it's changing everything.
And it's not just the science, right? It's the business side, too. We're seeing a real shift in power dynamics.
Exactly. Smaller companies are stepping up and challenging the status quo.
And we have to remember the ethical implications of all of this. These innovations are powerful, and we need to make sure they're used for good.
Couldn't agree more. It's a fascinating and complex landscape, and we're just starting to understand its potential.
Oh, so true. Okay, one final question for you before we wrap up. With all this innovation happening, how do you think the role of our healthcare providers will change? I mean, how do doctors and hospitals need to adapt to keep up with all of this?
Yeah, it's a big question, isn't it? How do doctors keep up with all this new technology?
It is. I mean, we're moving into this era of personalized medicine, gene therapies, AI doing diagnostics.
It's a lot.
It is. And it's going to require a whole new skill set for healthcare providers. Are you saying doctors are going to have to become like experts in genomics, bioinformatics, data science?
Well, in a way, yes. They'll need to be able to understand all that complex genetic data. They'll need to know how to interpret it, know how personalized therapies work, and they'll have to learn how to work with all these new AI diagnostic tools.
Wow. That's a lot to ask. I mean, med school is going to have to change, right?
It is, and we're already seeing it happen. More and more medical schools are adding genomics and bioinformatics to their curriculum.
Makes sense.
Yeah,
But it's not just about learning new stuff. It's about a whole new way of thinking, isn't it?
definitely. Healthcare providers are going to have to embrace this data-driven approach, really focus on the individual patient.
Right. So what doctors are all going to have to work in teams now, like with geneticists and data scientists.
It's very likely. The future of healthcare is probably going to be a lot more team-based.
So the days of the doctor working alone in their office are over.
It's starting to look that way. The whole model of care is shifting.
I mean, it's not just doctors, right? It's nurses, pharmacists, everyone.
Absolutely. It's a huge change, and it's going to affect everyone in healthcare.
So these biopharma advancements, they're not just changing how we treat diseases, they're changing the whole healthcare system.
Exactly. And it's happening now. It's really incredible to see.
Okay, well, that's a lot to digest.
Mm.
Let's recap one last time for our listeners. We've seen that biopharma is just exploding with innovation. New therapies, new ways of doing business. It's really exciting.
And we've talked about how all of this is raising some pretty big ethical questions, things we really need to consider as we move forward.
We have to be careful and make sure these innovations are used the right way.
Absolutely. It's a big responsibility.
But at the end of the day, what we're seeing is that the future of healthcare is being shaped by this amazing industry, the biopharma industry.
And the people in it. It's truly remarkable to see.
Okay, one final thought before we go. We've talked about the science, the technology, the business side of things. But what about the human impact? How do you think all of this is going to affect patients and their families?
That's a great question. And I think the answer is that these innovations have the potential to change lives in a really profound way. We're talking about curing genetic diseases, managing cancer more effectively, even preventing diseases before they start.
That's amazing.
It really is.
It's a hopeful future. But we have to be responsible, right? We have to make sure these advancements benefit everyone.
We do. It's up to all of us to make sure that happens.
Well said. Okay, everyone, that's our deep dive into biopharma breakthroughs for today. I hope you found it as fascinating as we did.
Yeah, it's been a great conversation.
And for those of you who want to dive even deeper, be sure to check out the show notes. We've got links to all the sources we used, plus those awesome visualizations the AI created.
Definitely worth checking out.
Thanks for listening, everyone. Keep those questions coming, keep learning, and we'll see you next time.